Welcome back to Prime Your Day, Prime Your Midlife. And today I'm going to ask you some pertinent questions about your own health and well-being and whether or not you're really looking after yourself. And I've got somebody here to help me and help you ask those questions. Steve Ball, welcome to our podcast today. It's nice to have you. How are you, mate?
Hi, Chris. Yeah, good to see you. Good, thanks. Are you okay?
Very well, thank you. All right, well, we're going to get straight into the meat of this, and I'm going to challenge you first off, Steve. My normal question around the word midlife. Do you believe it's a word that's associated with crisis or mindset, Steve?
It can easily, for a lot of people, be associated with crisis. There's a hell of a lot of demands on us, and at this stage of our lives, often, and you get pulled in a lot of directions. There's often financial commitments. There's a lot of other things going on, family-wise, work-wise, parents, all those friends, all those kind of things that are just part of our day-to-day lives. But I think, yeah, it's definitely about sort of trying to manage it, I think, and not end up in crisis.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to roll back the dice a little bit. 10 years, and we had a fascinating conversation before the podcast around where we're going to go with this discussion. And I think you learned something about your own experience through dealing with something. And I'm just going to ask you to remember when you sat down in a chair and the doctor was in front of you and he told you something that was really quite stark. Can you just help the listeners experience how you felt and what happened at that time, Steve?
Yeah, sure. So I found out I had cancer of the kidney. So I was 39. I was 6 weeks just off my 40th birthday. I had a 13-year-old and an 18-month-old. Life was going really well. And I peed some blood. That was what happened with me. And I mean, a tiny amount, a teaspoon amount of blood. And it only ever happened once. I felt great. I was in good health. And I went to my GP, and she was brilliant. She had a good initial chat with me, and she said, look, let's not panic. I know this might sound a couple of stupid questions, but have you eaten a lot of beetroot? Which I cannot stand beetroot. And she said, and have you had vigorous sex? Because that can also cause the blood. So I got sent off for some scans, and to me, I kind of knew in my head what was going on, and things went fairly quick, to be fair, in the NHS system the first few weeks, and then that day that you're referring to, the consultant brought up the scans, showed me my left and right kidneys, and he highlighted the area which was basically the top third of my left kidney. And he said, this is the area that I'm really worried about. I'm not saying what it is or what it isn't, but I'm concerned enough to need to do something about it. And,
okay. So can I just ask, in terms of your own experience of living or hearing that word cancer, had you had any family or anybody close to you that had gone through the same experience as you had, or you were facing it?
Not necessarily like that, but I guess, we all know people that have had cancer and have passed away, but I didn't know anything about cancer of the kidney for a start. And he explained actually that it's an incidental cancer. So whereas some cancers are hereditary, some are lifestyle, etc., he said this isn't like that. He said we don't quite know why and how. But what I do know is it's very dangerous and it needs to be dealt with. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to lose my full kidney. I'd done the thing that you should probably never do, and I'd done a bit of Googling, which is human nature. So it was a case of, right, this is how we're going to deal with it. And at the time, I had private healthcare.
Okay, can we'll just talk about how you're going to deal with it? I just want to go back a little bit in terms of the fact that you saw that sort of marker when you're having a wee, and you decided to take some proactive action. Was there anything before that you can now look back and think, that was a link, or that was another sign, or was it literally as stark as that? You had that moment where something stared back at you?
There's nothing at all, nothing at all. And often one of the signs for cancer of the kidney is back pain, which I had no back pain whatsoever. So it was literally that, and it only happened once. So not much. A warning, your body gives you a warning, but that was all I had. So I was obviously, to be blunt, if I hadn't have reacted, then it could have been, a lot worse. I could have ended up, it could have been.
And what made you react? Because I know that there's a lot of men that kind of will just think, it's just one of those things. I'm sure it was just nothing, and they'll just pass it off as something that was just nothing, and they're not willing to be, man enough to admit that actually there could be something there. What made you be different, Steve, and being positive about that?
Good question. I think it was so visual. I think that's probably the only answer I can offer, because there was no pain. It wasn't like I had back pain or I was tired or anything else like that. It was a wow, that just happened, and I was fine. I was at a rugby match that weekend, and then I was at a wedding. It was bank holiday weekend in May, and there was a lot going on. And then I went to my GP. Well, literally, it was a bank holiday Monday, and I went on the Tuesday.
Okay. And do you think before that diagnosis, was there anything that happened in life in the year, 2 years, 3 years before that was causing you a huge amount of anxiety or stress that the body was trying to react to in terms of signs and cause and effect?
It doesn't feel like that. A lot had been going on in my life in the previous few years, but it didn't feel that was a reaction to that. And also the consultant, when we were chatting things over, that wasn't seen as a reason either. And it is often the case with cancer of the kidney that they struggle to attach it to a particular reason.
Okay, well, thank goodness you were that alarm bell that rang out when you saw something and thought, "Hey up, that's not normal." Thank goodness you did. So you then sat down with the consultant. He was explaining the situation with your kidney. Tell us what happened then. What happened next for you?
So he literally drew on the scan what it was, and I had a little bit of a complication as well, because I had an issue with my right kidney that we were not aware of, which he was not concerned about. He just described it as maintenance, but he basically said we need to, at the same time as we remove the top third of your left kidney, he said I need to do some maintenance on the right kidney at the same time. And essentially what he did is he put in a small stent. I had a narrow tube essentially that needed dealing with at the same time, because that kidney was going to need to be fully functional. So that was what we did, and then he talked me through the technical stuff and what it was about, and then I was in the following Wednesday, so no time to think about it whatsoever, and it was a case of let's deal with it. There was no choice. There was not going to be any treatment to get my head around and understand. It was literally, right, this is what you need to do between now and then. And if you've had, the good thing was it was keyhole, which is a huge difference. So I had a load of tests done over the next few days to make sure that I was fit enough for surgery, which is standard anyway, whatever you're having done. And then Wednesday, the following Wednesday came around. So.
Now, the thing with keyhole is that it sounds, you say it's the good thing, but internally they're still messing you up a lot, aren't they, in terms of what goes on?
Bruised. I was seriously bruised, right down from my groin up to my armpit. I looked like I'd taken a severe beating, and that was a bit of a shock, because although he was great, he didn't quite warn me about that. So I was very achy for quite a long time. But yeah, where they go in as well. So it's sort of, if you like, belt line where they go in. But what they do is amazing. The technology is huge, and that aids with quicker recovery.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who is listening, I've never had to do it, but I know that the word keyhole suggests that it's going in small, but when they're inside, there's just the same amount of invasive surgery going on, and you must respect the convalescence process. How were you with the convalescence process, Steve?
I think I was okay. It was relatively short. we'd kind of had the run up to the operation, which I say was only a week, and we were really. My wife was great. She was really positive. We just kind of got through step by step, I suppose, and broke it down into stages. We never had the what if conversation. That we were really positive about it, and then that continued after my operation. It was a case of right, you do it by the book. If the consultant said you do this, and after a few days of having, I'm not one for taking painkillers. And I was on tramadol and codeine, and after a few days, I was sort of just tired and groggy, and I got rid of the codeine, binned that one off, and stayed on the tramadol for about a week roughly. But I just wanted to kind of come off that because it's not great for your system. You're basically putting chemicals in, and I felt that I was at the point where I didn't need to do that. But it was summer. It was a really nice hot summer. So my wife went back to work after a few days, and I was fortunate enough to be able to move around a little bit, and I rediscovered reading, which was quite strange really to me, and had no choice than to do nothing.
Okay, I just want to explore that sentence. That sentence you had there of, I didn't really contemplate the what if scenario. It's such a wonderful way of describing how your mindset was. Do you believe that enabled you to push through and deal with it better than if you had focused on the what if and the ever decreasing spiral of how this could unravel in a bad way?
All my friends and family were great, and everyone was really supportive just before the op and then just after. But it was a case really of letting my friends know just the day before or 2 days before. I'm not one for doing an awful lot on social media, non-work, and I wasn't going to live my life through social media. One day to the op, today's the day, and all that kind of stuff. That's not me, and that was my choice. So I think when you and I were chatting on the phone the other day, I said to you that actually a lot of people didn't know.
And some probably still don't. They might be watching this now and actually thinking, goodness me, I had no idea.
Yeah, and I think the positivity is it does get you through things, doesn't it? It does help, and you can't always do that on your own, so you need other people to help you with that. But yeah, it was, I can genuinely say going into the day of the op, I genuinely felt really calm. Just was like, let's get on with this. I didn't have a choice, did I? It's not like I could say, do you know what?
Well, no, but you didn't have a choice. But is this something that you would see back as a recurring pattern, that you're working despite your environment as opposed to because of it? You chose not to be I'm not going to use the word, well, I am going to use the word victim, but you're the victim of the hard luck story. But you chose to create a compelling future based on how you wanted to react to the news and the next steps, as opposed to falling back on woe is me, I can't believe I'm so unlucky. Is that something that you would have looked back at and thought, well, there was that situation where you had the same kind of mindset?
I think, yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, life doesn't always run to plan, does it? Just generally health and work and everything else. And I think, you might want to sort of, feel sorry for yourself for a little bit, but ultimately that can't last for too long, because you're the main person who's going to drag yourself out of that feeling, and you can do it with help, but you have to do a lot of it yourself, and that's the main sort of driving, isn't it? You know yourself, you know your own body, you know your own mind, and you need help from people from time to time, but ultimately you make your own choices and your own moves.
Okay, I'm curious, once you had that diagnosis and then obviously you had the treatment, which was successful, what did they tell you about the surgery post-op?
Yeah, so there was no treatment other than obviously the actual operation itself, and then I had a meeting with him after a couple of weeks with the consultant, I should say, and then the main one really was a month later when they had a real good sort of idea, and he said, we're were really happy with how it went. You know, he said, I'm confident I've got it all. But then as you go through the next part of the process, you then go for another scan and bloods after 6 months, and then that becomes, you know, you part of your recovery in its own right, really, because you physically recovered. I was back at work probably 2.5, 3 weeks after the op, which is probably too soon, really, to be fair. Couldn't play golf. I said this year, I couldn't play golf for 12 weeks post-op because of your stomach muscles. So obviously for golf, that's not great. So that wasn't good. That was annoying. And then I had to have another operation in the October for that maintenance on the other kidney that I was telling you about. But that was another story, really. But the process of going through it all was quite challenging. But the actual physical recovery was actually pretty quick. Your body heals quickly if you do the right things and follow the instructions.
But what about your own mental state? I often talk about the fact that we seem to have two mountains of life. One is the first one, which is perhaps motivated by profession or wealth or finances or even the guidance of the people that brought us up. And then at some point something happens, whether it be trauma, a life event, a separation, and it then makes you judge whether or not the mountain you climbed was the right one. Did you mentally reassess or revisit anything and go, as a result of this, I am now going to, or did you just kind of paper over it and just crack on with where you were already left off?
I don't think I papered over it, but it was definitely an element of cracking on with where I left off, you know, and trying to sort of just get back to normality, really. And there wasn't an awful lot of disruption. It was because it all happened so quickly. And it was 6 weeks before my 40th birthday. So we had a meeting with the consultant so at the end of July, so just before my birthday, and he was asking how I was doing and that kind of thing, and I was saying about, you know, having a drink, having a pint, for example, for my birthday, and he said, well, you look well, you feel well, do what you want to do, you know. And he was really supportive and really suddenly said, it's a big birthday, you can't just sit in, you've got to go and enjoy it, and you deserve to. So that was, I think there was no sort of moment where I sort of thought, right, this has changed my life. I felt relieved that was how I felt, and I think also, like I said to you as well, I think over the last few years I've not talked about it as much as maybe I should have done. And what I mean by that is not because I need to for my own mental well-being. I'm comfortable with what happened and where I'm at, but more to sort of spread the message to other people, really, men and women, but particularly men, because we're notorious for not being great at going to the doctors. We all know that, and I think maybe I could have done more, maybe to highlight that somehow, which hopefully this chat that you and I are having will go somewhere to doing that.
Well, precisely that, because we're in some similar groups with each other, and I said, does anybody want to contribute to a podcast that I do? And you were one of the first to say yes. When you said yes, did you have a feeling then that this was calling you to want to talk about your kidney cancer journey, or was it just curiosity to think, I wonder how this is going to develop as a conversation?
Both, because I kind of ticked, I would probably say I ticked your criteria, because midlife, middle age, whatever.
And you're a man.
And I'd previously had a health. You and I don't know each other sort of real well, so you wouldn't have known about it. And the opportunity to make sure that the word is out there. And incidentally, I said to you before, by total coincidence, somebody else who I know, but I don't know him personally, through his employer, they've just done a video as well, just recently, outlining the importance of particularly men, looking after yourselves and making sure you do go to the GP and And in his case, it was more to sort of confirm that there was something wrong, and he knew there was something wrong, and he did something about it. Whereas mine was a little bit different. His was cancer of the kidney, the same as me, but his symptoms were different. But it just proves that you can't take a chance. You cannot take a chance on your health. You've got to deal with it and face it.
Yeah, it's something that sadly the statistics suggest that 1 in 2, 1 in 3 of us will face into something connected to or be very closely linked to somebody with cancer. I know I lost both my parents to cancer, and therefore I've got as much experience of anybody of being hurt by it. But you are one of the success stories in terms of the fact that you decided to take proactive action. You got seen by the NHS. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was the NHS process?
So initially, yes, I was advised to just stick with the NHS process initially. This was anyway from my situation. So the initial GP appointment, then the ultrasound, and then another scan after that was a scan from NHS, and then we moved forward with the private health, which often is the case. It was a physician consultant, just a different building. So
yeah, okay. So it's not all, we get triggered a lot by the loss stories, and I'm not trying to suggest to anybody right now that I haven't got empathy or understanding of how cancer can cause such heartache, because I've been there. But talking to you about the fact that it can happen, you can lean into it, get the right diagnosis, and then have a very good life afterwards.
Absolutely, yeah. And within a few weeks, apart from not being able to play golf for 12 weeks, which was annoying, the rest of my life was back to normal.
Can we ever play golf though, Steve, at our age and our ability?
Yeah, so that was, I think for me, the lack of sort of activity was not very easy. Not being able to walk stuff like that as I wanted to. But that was literally within a few weeks was back to normal. So, but yeah, and life rolls on, and then next year is 10 years. So I've been going for the yearly scans and the blood tests. So next year is 10 years.
Okay. And are you still an avid reader now? Is that something you obviously leaned into when you were going through your rehabilitation? Do you still read a lot?
Yeah, I do. And it's a strange thing. The day before my op, I just randomly went into a bookshop and picked 2 books because I thought I haven't got much time. The op's tomorrow. I need to crack on and buy something. And that's been something now that I really enjoy doing, and it kind of switches me off. And we all need to be able to switch off, and I'm probably better at it maybe now than I used to be, but I'm still work in progress really in terms of switching off from life and just trying to jump off the wheel for a little bit and try and sort of balance things out.
All right. Well, it is Christmas. My Christmas tree's behind me here. So, men are really difficult to find presents for. Going into your 10 years of reading, what's a book that you would recommend each father, brother, uncle should put on their Christmas list?
Okay. I probably, 2 books actually. I mainly read fiction, so I got into Lee Child and a guy called Stephen Leather and James Patterson, those kind of people. But the book that I really, really enjoyed, that I think people sort of our age really like, Bob Mortimer, his autobiography, was just really good. I think the fishing program that he did just recently with Paul Whitehouse, which is one of the few programs that we all can watch in our house, because it's just one of those programs you just put it on, and it's just easy watching. You just chill out, and I like fishing as well. I quite like good fishing when I can, but it's one of those programs that everybody loves it. Like grandma and granddads love it. My youngest daughter watches it. We all watch it. It's just and that kind of link, I think, with Bob Mortimer. And then he'd had, by coincidence, he'd had some health issues as well, but he'd had I think heart bypass or something like that. So yeah, that's a good Christmas book if someone fancies that.
All right, Bob Mortimer's autobiography. I've noted that down. I needed a few extra additions to my list, so thank you very much for that. All right, a couple of more serious questions now. Just looking backwards on your 10 years since that diagnosis, Is there anything now looking backwards that you would like to have said to that 39-year-old Steve coming out of that doctor's consultation room, or are you very happy with the journey that you had since then?
Yeah, I'm happy. I've been working for myself now for a period of time, which is a transition, from a permanent employed role to working for yourself is not easy, and that's quite challenging. It brings its own challenges, but just the work's the same. I've been a recruiter for 25 years, so the work's the work, and that doesn't change in a lot of ways. The job's changed a little bit, but it's essentially still the same as it was, and you're still dealing with people and that kind of thing. But I think my life has probably changed. I think as we get older, I think looking back, I think, to be fair, I'm pretty proud and pleased with how we got through it as a family, and how I sort of changed sort of my views really. And it was a case of if I hadn't have gone and dealt with it, then it could have been really bad. The charity runs, like they do one over here, and they dress in pink, and they pay a subscription, like an entry fee, and then it all goes to charity and all that kind of stuff. So I think when I was about a year after my op, my wife and my mum and my eldest daughter, who was about 14 probably, they did one of the charity runs around the park and all that kind of stuff, and they came back in, and like the running bibs, and they write on it. If you've seen it, they write on for my mum or for my dad and that sort of thing. And my eldest had written on the back for my dad, survivor. I was like, shit, and that really got me.
Okay. I'm also interested in the conversation you had with your wife at the time, and how she was either a supporter or a cheerleader or a challenger for you at that period. What was that like?
Yeah, that looking back, that was really good. The way that worked out, and I think she's a very positive person, and it was, to be quite honest, there was a few discussions, but there wasn't we talked all the time about it, but like I said earlier on, definitely wasn't a conversation about what if at all. And it was more, the working through I suppose the process of the operation. My youngest daughter was only 18 months old as well, so having her around but not being able to sort of lift her up or something like that after my op was tricky. But that was literally just for a few weeks. Really, it was a very short period of time. So yeah, we were positive throughout, and I think that was one of the reasons I was so calm going into the operation, that I was I wasn't.
And what would it have meant to you if that hadn't been the case, and she had perhaps been stressed, anxious? Oh my goodness, we need to get our life assurance and our will sorted out. How would that have affected your relationship as a twosome?
Yeah, I think that wouldn't have helped, would it? I think that sort of attitude is counterproductive, isn't it? And that's just not the way she is anyway. And as a family as a whole, we dealt with it. And there are sort of times when you look back, and think, actually, God, how did we deal with it really, with everything that was going on? But to be fair as well, the way it sort of worked out from a private health point of view was really important at that point, because I was very well looked after, and the NHS had done a great job to get me to that point. But actually, the care I got was great.
Okay. I'm going to ask you in a minute your sort of three fundamentals, but I'm also interested. You seem very content with where you're at, and also the way your day serves you. Is there anything that you're doing as a ritual or as a routine on a daily basis to try to make you live the best life that you can? And also your healthcare and things that you're doing to try to really be on top of it?
Yeah, I think when you work for yourself, it's long days sometimes, isn't it? I've tried to sort of temper that a little bit and be sensible about that. I don't go to the gym, but I may well start thinking about that. There's no excuses really for not going. I play golf, as you know, and I walk. One of the things since working for myself, I know my office is a mile from my house, so invariably I just walk in and walk back and walk the dog, and that's, so I walk, a lot of miles in a week. I probably do, well, easily 20 miles every single week. Hence probably why I don't have time to go to the gym. But I think it's just finding, I'm not into cycling, but I know friends that are into cycling, for example, that switches them off. That's their time just to switch off from everything or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what you release. The physical activity is good for your well-being, isn't it? But you know what? If that's not what you want to do, it doesn't matter, does it? It's just something just to be able to switch off and try and try and take your head away from whatever it is that's on your mind, whether that's work related or personal or whatever.
Well, it sounds like a good routine. It sounds like it's serving you well. You talk about the fact that you have your annual check now. Is that something you were doing before? And if not, why not?
It was certainly not something that I was ever doing before. And again, I was 39. So,
you've had a car for all those years, probably between you were 20 and 19. You have a MOT and a service every year of the car?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So at 39, it wasn't anything that would even have, would have crossed my mind at all. And then obviously going on to the 6 monthly scans following the cancer, and then the yearly scans and the blood, just became sort of, oh God, is it June again? I've got to go and have my scan, and you're in and out, and then they ring you up a few weeks later, and I've always had no issues at all, and you go through the process, and then I suppose obviously next year the 10-year milestone is a little bit different, and the routine will then change because of the 10-year milestone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, if anybody's listening and you're not doing your well man's check, they take probably an hour to an hour and a half, and you'll say, I haven't got time, I can't fit it in. I defy you to say that you couldn't have found an hour and a half in the last week. You probably spent an hour at least on TikTok or social media or LinkedIn, and those hour and a half could be spent with a couple of needles and a couple of checks, a couple of blood pressure checks, and you could walk away with a really good feeling of, I took action to be proactive, to look after myself, and also those that are depending on me, both in business and also in my family. Yeah. All right, final question then to you, Steve, in terms of how can we be more like Steve? He seems to be very much on it. He does run a very successful recruitment business as well, by the way, for anybody who's listening. It's Steve Ball Recruitment. How can we learn from your own years? I think it's 49 so far, and we're looking forward to the next 49. What were your 3 fundamentals to leave us with, to how to leave a good midlife men's life and beyond?
Well, I think I've given this some thought this morning since we had a chat last week, and I'm not saying I'm great at all these, by the way. This is what I try and will continue to try and be better at. The main one for me is, don't be too hard on yourself, because I think there's a lot of work I could do on that, whether it's when I'm playing golf or at work or just generally. We're all too hard on ourselves, by a long chalk. And I think as well, the other one would be time for yourself, which we talked about a few minutes ago a little bit. I'm not saying my commute to work as a 15-minute walk is the only time I get, but actually just that time out to yourself, whatever that may be, whether that is, going for a run, or which, a lot of people do, or biking, or whatever it is, just that time for yourself, even if it's just half an hour. And again, I'm not saying I'm great at that, but I'm trying to get better, because sometimes you just got to just take that time out and just unwind a little bit and stop thinking about things. And then the last one, which I actually think I've got a lot better at in the last few years, is to ditch those devices, in particular on the night. I'm not saying I do that all the time, but certainly I never take the phone, my mobile, to bed ever. I try to leave it in the kitchen in a totally different room after a certain time. Most nights I do that. Just because it can just spoil your mood. You know, you can. I've learned lessons from that when I was on holiday. You know, working for myself. Obviously, I need to be knowing what's going on, and I annoyed myself a couple of years ago on holiday, checking my phone, and it's not always good news, is it? You know, something had happened. Somebody had given back word on an offer. It was a big fee that we would have had. Great, you know, I spent days on it, days and days, and it came through on my phone. My own stupid fault for reading it, but it changed my mood for a little bit because I was, you know, annoyed with myself as well. So yeah, we could all be better at that. Definitely, we're attached to our phones far too much.
I love those 3 steps, and particularly I'm playing golf on Wednesday. I know there's a couple of people there that I just wish they would do that rehearsal practice. I think it was a tennis player that said to me, spend the first 10 seconds berating yourself about the stupid shot that you've just done, then spend the next 10 minutes of finding yourself in the moment, and then spend the next 10 seconds thinking about the next shot, because the next shot is the most important one, not the last one that you've just fluffed. I loved your 3 steps there. Yeah, looking after yourself, being kind for yourself, time for yourself, and that last one of no screen time. Because yeah, the screen generally fills you with bad news, because that's what triggers the fight or flight mechanism in your head to be looking for bad news. And when bad news comes, it's then looking for affirmation that actually it's not going to be as bad as you thought it was going to be. So ditch the phone and be more congruent and be better for the people that are around you. Love those 3 tips, Steve. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Listen, I want to appreciate you. I want to firstly thank you for reaching out. Secondly, I want to thank you for being really honest and transparent about your journey, and also just for saying to a few blokes or women who might be listening, take good care of yourself. And if you see something, you feel something, or you hear something, don't ignore it. Lean into it. What's the worst that can happen? They tell you it's fine, but it might be something completely different. But you've taken the step to be in control. So thank you, Steve. Any closing words?
No, it's good to talk to you. I enjoyed chatting. I think it's you know, as men would always chat enough about these kind of issues. And I think, you know, probably, you know, the only regret I've probably got from as a result of my cancer diagnosis is not talking about it more, really, in terms of trying to spread the word and getting people to react, you know, in a positive way to what they may be faced with. And I think, you know, maybe it's long overdue actually having this kind of conversation, really.
Well, it's happened, and I want to appreciate you again for sharing your journey and congratulate you on what you've managed to achieve so far. And here's to your 50th and life that goes on after that, Steve. Thank you so much for your time.
That's Chris. Cheers.
Thank you.